Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are connected from. Well, welcome to Creative Workshops. We are here today to share, to bring light, and to, of course, work together to grow the dance industry worldwide. This is an initiative that is brought together and it contains 20 different workshops, completely free workshops that All Dance International is giving to all of our all dancers to widen our view, to broaden our view of each one of our different 24 techniques and 45 different modalities we have in All Dance International. So this is an initiative that is brought to help grow the dance industry, grow the industry in dance worldwide, if every one of the techniques and in general. So this is going to fortify all the efforts, and I want to give special thanks to All Dance International for this, and of course Maria Fernanda Castro, our All Dance General Director, who is always looking for new ways to help dance grow and to help all of us grow together and have the same views so everybody has better results and to create a very positive competitive environment for all the dancers. My name is Sandra Correa. I'm Technical Director of All Dance International, and we will be here today, well, sharing a lot of different information with our one of our judges that's part of our staff. All of these workshops are going to be accompanied staff members that's part of the All Dance International team that's always aligned with the goals and the objectives of the organization. Well, today it is a pleasure to welcome Arnold Tavorda. He is a great artist, a great teacher that is always willing to share his knowledge, to share all of his artistic view as well. That is very, very well wide known, who is always willing to help, here to share all of the information we need to know that is going to help us. And well, of course, today we are going to be talking of three different modalities: hip hop, dance hall, and Afrodance. And he is going to be here sharing all the little details that can help us to have, of course, better results, and that are going to be part of one of the elements that's very important to get, of course, a better qualifications, and this is going to help you in all your performances. Well, if you're here on YouTube, well, we have our you can leave comments. Remember to subscribe and like. If you're here live, well, we can have make questions. We can ask him whatever we need that's going to help us in all of the elements that are going to help us, and of course help us in our choreographies to come to the next level. Well, this is a creative workshop, so here we're going to be here sharing part of the information that is going to help us. So the information that we need will be, of course, one element that's going to be for of course, our performances and everyone. But of course, we're going to give the knowledge, because we have two components that are going to be very important for our if it's going to be very important for our performances. So let's say creative process has two components: one, knowledge, and the other one, creativity. That would be actually, let's say, imagination for that creativity. So here, well, we have, let's say, the information that you're going to need in order to start your creations, and the imagination, well, that one will be up to you, because well, we can't do that for everybody, and that's the special, and let's say the beautiful element that we have, because that'll allow us to, of course, have a lot of different creations, a lot of different elements on our performances, and each one be unique, but all according to the same guidelines that we're going to be sharing alike. For example, Guilford says that creativity is the capacity to generate different alternatives uh, with regarding one the information given. So that's going to be one of the elements that's here: the information given, and the, of course, the creativity of that will come from your imagination. So give me a second that we're going to welcome Arnold, who's going to be sharing all of this information that's going to help in that creative process. So, okay, so here with us is Arnold Tavorda. It's a pleasure to have you here, and welcome to All Dance Creative Workshops.
Thank you, all dance, and thank you everybody for coming. We are here to help you to take the next level in all of your participations in the All Dance International competition, and of course, in your acknowledge about the hip hop dancehall and Afrodance in All Dance International.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and there's a lot of information that we'll be seeing today about hip hop, dancehall, and Afro dance. So, without further ado, I'll leave you with Arnold, and he's going to be beginning with each one of the different modalities. And I hope this will help all the information you need for your workshop and for your creation of all of your competitive performances.
Okay, then we start with hip hop in all dance uh, rules. A broad modality that allows the execution of various urban dance styles, mainly breaking, locking, popping, light beat, party rock, Chicago footwork, turfing, juking, and hip hop dance, like a choreo hip hop dance. That styles are selected because they are danced with hip hop music or are contemporary in the time of the creation of these styles. That's why we select this style to be part of the hip hop modality. One or several styles in the same routine are allowed. You can do one or various styles in your choreography, but you must have a minimum duration of 4 count of eight in that style. If you use just one style or several styles, you need to use a minimum of 8 counts of each style. Um, it's necessary that you use the music according with the modality. In this case, to hip hop, you must be use only hip hop music or the different genre music connected with hip hop, like funk or other style that combine with these styles. On the choreography, you can do a maximum of 4 acrobatic or gymnastic elements. A custom or wrap up must be accord with your choreography style and the modality. Okay, now dancehall. Dancehall is genre, music, and dance style and culture born in Jamaica. Have different eras in the dance. You have 3 different periods: old school, middle school, and new school. You can use any of these periods in your choreography and mixing between them. Yeah. The music must be mainly dancehall. You can use dancehall mixes that combine dancehall with other rhythm of music, but mainly dancehall. Yeah, you can use different moves from the different periods, but you have to take care with the female and queen style and with the shotgun style, because in the competition it's not permitted to have sexual or violent concepts into the choreography. It's allowed mixing steps of remove the different periods, and you can use up to 2 acrobatic or gymnastic elements. Yeah, maximum 2. And I repeat, no sexual or violent tendencies are allowed on dancehall dances. And our third theme, Afro dance. Afro dance in all dance is the combination between traditional Afro dance with contemporary or modern music, like electronic or house. All of the music right now are combined with different traditional Afro dance, and then born new tendencies or style of Afro, like asonto, coupé de calais, kuduro, amapiano, dombolo, Afro house, conto, and pansula, among others. You can use any of these styles and you can combine everything in the Afro dance style in all dance. It's recommended to use all the time Afro music of these styles, and to take care with dancehall because dancehall is another style of Afro, but in all dance have your own category. Then when you use Afro dance, don't use dancehall in the Afro dance choreography on this modality. The constants must be according to the choreographic style and period. Yeah, you have to decide if you going to use a modern style in your choreography or a traditional style, and the constants must be according with that. The same in dancehall and Afro dance, you can use a maximum of two acrobatic or gymnastic elements. We had a note just for Afro dance, and this: when completing your registration forms, indicate the specific style or styles of your staging. That's because it's necessary to the judge can see clearly what style you use in your choreography.
Perfect. Yes, thank you very much, Arnold. So these are the basic elements that are going to be, let's say, well, viewed and should be present in your choreographies for them to stay and be, let's say, in the correct modality. So they has the present elements that are going to be essential for the modality to be seen correctly, enjoyed correctly, and of course, well, have a better score. Dance is evolving constantly, and a lot of new creations are coming, are arising, and of course, the creativity of the choreographers. Sometimes, when the dancers know different styles of dance, wish to combine them. Well, there is an opportunity in all dance to combine them. Stay tuned for all our workshops. We have All Dance Open, we have Urban Show, we have commercial. But here in these three modalities, the idea is to keep each one individually and apart to, let's say, exalt that culture and those dances. So here we're just going to keep them, let's say, clean, each one alone per se. So don't think it's limiting your creative process. There, remember, we have 45 different modalities where you can combine all the styles, different elements. So here, this is the one that we have these three, that each one is going to be on their own. Now, you already know, let's say we've shared the main elements that should be or that make part of each modality. Now, other elements are also going to be present and important for your performances. Now, one thing we have designed and very important in all dance are our levels. These levels are designed for each dancer to have a very positive competitive environment that will allow them to keep on growing and, of course, for everyone to have equal conditions on their competitive process. So for this, we have designed four main, let's say, levels and some combined levels. The main levels will be dancers, student level dancers, pre-professional and professional dancers. This will be according to the technical level and in some cases age or let's say they're where they're focused on in dance. So let's begin at the beginning with the new all dancers. Newer dancers will be determined as, of course, the beginner dancers. This will not be affected by how long they have been dancing, or maybe how many years they have been performing, how many competitions they've been at, because that's not something we can see, let's say, necessarily on the performance. What we can see is the technical level and the difficulty level in the choreography. So here we're going to limit a little the difficulty level in order for all the new all dancers to have a fair competition and an equal conditions. So here, normally very basic steps. If they're starting to turn, simple turns. If they are including acrobatic elements or gymnastic elements, they should be basic and simple elements that have both hands on the floor or the whole body supported on the floor for the execution. If they're doing jumps, simple jumps that don't involve great flexibility yet. So these elements are going to be, let's say, basic for all modalities and alike. And in some cases, there's some particularities to each, let's say, modality. So here, in general, new all dancers will be dancers from 4 years old up to 14 years old that have that basic level of difficulty and technical level in the performances. Now we have the student level. The student level are dancers from 6 years old and over who are dancing. It could be more years, or just because they have a more advanced development technically, that already, let's say, have the dominion of these basic elements and are starting to work on more difficult technical elements in the choreography. So the student level dancers do not have a technical limit of what they can include in the performance. There are dancers that are just exclusively using dance as a learning process. And we have student open, that are choreographies where we can see new all dancers and student dancers in the same performance combined. So these are, let's say, our student level dancers. We're all students and we're all in process of learning, but the pre-professional, the professional dancers will be the dancers, let's say, who have a very higher technical level, higher difficulty, but are the dancers who are also starting to consider dance as a serious profession. So they are student teachers, or they help their teachers in class. They are choreographers, workshop artists. Okay, so if you're a teacher, you're a workshop artist, maybe a choreographer, and you're from 15 to 17 years old, you will be considered a pre-professional dancer. If you are a teacher, a workshop artist, or a choreographer, and you're over 18 years old, you will be considered a professional dancer. So those are, let's say, big main characteristics that will be pre-professional and professional. If you're a very advanced student level dancer, but you don't teach, or you're not a student teacher, you're not helping in class, but you do wish to compete against the pre-professionals because you have a lot of competitive experience, or you have a very high technique and you wish to do so, that is not a problem, no issue. You can. Just keep in mind you cannot go back. So if you wish to keep on going and going up each time more with that experience on stage, it is of course viable to do so and has no problem whatsoever. Now, for the choreographies that might combine pre-professional and professional dancers in the same performance, will be considered open pro. So here in open pro, we can see choreographies who combine freely some pre-professional dancers and some professional dancers. No problem there. Now, and we have this year our new level that's open. The open level is open all ages, all levels, for open production, large groups. This is for those large productions where we can see some new all dancers with maybe pre-professional dancers, or student combined with professional. Here we can, let's say, combine all ages, all levels without any regard. Now here, the limit is it should be choreographies from 13 dancers or more, that you can combine all levels, all ages without any problem restriction. Now, this is like what will be a new dancer will be considered a student and how to divide them. Now, Arnold is going to give us a little broader view of what are the expectations regarding the judges that are going to be looking for in each one of the levels, of course, depending on the age as well as the level, and specifically also in these three modalities that we're sharing here with you today. So, Arnold, what can you share and maybe complement that will help them in their creative process for these level dancers?
Okay, dance is a process to build step by step to the technique. That's why these levels are created for that. Then, from the judges' perspective, we expect to see in new dancers basic content, basic, basic concepts, and basic movements, but in good executions because they are starting your process. Then, in the students, we have to see foundation movies of the styles, basic movement with clear and correct execution, and a good manage of the stage, projection, and interpretation. In the combination of students open, new dancers with the students, we have to see performance that the combination was effectively put in the scene. Students, no, pre-professional. In the pre-professional, we need to watch movement and combination in an intermediate level and upper. A very good manage of the space, projection, and interpretation during the choreo because they are projecting like a professional. Yeah, they are not teachers, but there can be monitors or they can be very good representation of the technique. In professional, we expect to see an advanced execution of the style or the different styles. Therefore, the use of the space, the interpretation, the projection, and in general of the performance, all the performance, in the highest standards possible to the different style or styles. Then in Open Pro, you can combine pre-professional and professional. Then we expect to see like the same in professional, the intermediate or advanced technique and use of the space and projection and everything. The last one, open. In open, you can combine all the categories from new dancer to professional, but the performance must be the best possible with the I don't know. Yeah, the use of different elements of different techniques from each levels combined in a very good performance.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, Arnold. So here, as you can see, especially in the open levels, it's going to be a lot of the creative process of how you bring them together in your performance. So it adds more elements to your to each choreography, and it is something that can be, let's say, different, and of course cause some elements of surprise that can be a positive, let's say, outtake on the performance. Now, those are the elements that are going to be considered in level and considered in the modality. Now, let's see how the scoring process will be, let's say, executed and evaluated so we know what elements we should have present in our performance and maybe what elements we should avoid in order to not have any deductions. Now, our scoring method in All Dance International is designed to make the competition a positive competitive environment, equal for all dancers, and of course, a very just process for results. Now, for this, we have the responsibility of three judges. One is the modality judge, who will be awarding a maximum possible of 70 points to the 100 participants in the competition. total points possible in all dance international as a maximum score. And the complimentary judge can give a maximum score of 30 points of those 100 points. So the modality and complimentary judge, we can see that it put together are the maximum 100 points. The modality judge, additional from this, will also be giving a feedback to the dancers in order to help their development in dance. Now, we have our third judge, that's the deduction judge. This judge has the responsibility of keeping all of the regulations in place, helping the competition to be, of course, as positive environment as possible, and well, will be doing some deductions according to the All Dance Code and Organic Code. Now, the idea is to know all of these elements that can add to our score and know all the possible deductions in order to avoid any possible deduction. So that's why we are here today sharing this information with you so you can apply it wisely in your choreographies. Now, each one of the different criteria that we're going to see that the judges are going to be looking for have a different score or maximum score possible. Now, according to each one of those, the judges will be looking and judging, let's say, according to ranks, where we can see an average score in each one that are the basic elements that should be present in each one of the criterias that we are going to be going over in a minute. And of course, we can always go above average and let's say rise of the expectations and go above expectations. So here we can see those, let's see, scores in each criteria that are almost perfect. And in some elements and some criteria, we may be a little below average and still have to work on elements to strive in those specific areas. So it's also going to help us to see which areas we are very good at, which ones we have to work a lot more, and which ones we have to work more, but we're getting closer to that above average. So that'll help us also in our development and our technical process. Now, what other elements do we have to see? Now, we're going to see in each one of the judges what are the specific criteria that they're going to be looking for in order to give the total score. You can see on the right hand of each one of the criteria that we have the maximum score possible for that criteria. The judge doesn't choose the maximum he wants or she wants, but the maximum is the score that is to the right. Now, specific technique is going to be divided in two different criteria. One, correct modality, and technical level. Now, in correct modality will be, let's say, look for all the basic elements that Arnold already shared with us. All the basic elements that are composing, let's say, hip hop, if it's a hip hop choreography, that it has the elements that he shared with us. And that will help determine the correct modality, the technique applied, the music, the wardrobe, all the elements, the context that we're creating will help and have the correct modality. And of course, look to have the highest score possible. Also, we have technical level. When we're talking about the technical level, well, it will be the technical level according to the level of the dancers and the age, but that will be part of the execution that the judges see of all the technical elements involved in the choreography. Also, is going to be looking at the execution of the performance. And so this will be divided in synchronization and skill. When we're talking about soloist dancers, well, synchronization won't be the element here that say that will be regarding. We will be looking at the skill per se. In synchronization that we're talking about duos, duets, trios, or groups, it's the, let's say, the teamwork, where we can see synchronized or not synchronized movement, but clear movement of the timing and the teamwork. So if they're supposed to move together, it should be clear. If they're moving in a canon, it should be clear. So how are the movements that compose the choreography? And the correct, of course, execution that we'll see about the skill. So all the technical elements and each movement involved in the choreography. So what is the level of execution? Is it clear? Is it, of course, correctly executed? Is it, let's say, the correct alignment? All the little elements that are part of the skill, of course, of each one of the different modalities, because each one has, of course, different technique. The difficulty. Here in difficulty, we're talking about extraordinary movements and elements of risk. When we hear this, we normally refer or think we're referring to all the acrobatic elements and all those, let's say, acrobatic gymnastic elements that, of course, if we choose to include them in the choreography within the limits established in each modality, it will be considered an element of risk, but it's not the only elements of risk that will be considered. The extraordinary movements in dance technique are going to be the technical elements in the technique that give it that, let's say, that difficulty, that are those virtuous movements that are difficult in the technique, sometimes because of their speed, sometimes because of the ability they require, because of the strength they require, and each modality has different elements that will be considered extraordinary movements. And of course, all the elements of risk are those elements that can, of course, cause any possible, let's say, risk of maybe falling or risk of maybe not being very precise. So cannons in very high speed, some elements of that need extreme control. So all those elements are also going to be considered or extraordinary movements or elements of risk in the performance. So that way we can use the elements inside and that are part of the technique to give it that extra level and take each choreography to the maximum level possible. So here, if Arnold has any elements that he wishes to add or to complement the information specifically also for the techniques that we're talking about, or in general, what can you complement maybe here of the information?
Okay. In a specific technique, we avoid to lose points when you use a different technique in the modality. Yeah, because each modality have the style that you can use. Then if you use any other style a little bit, you may lose points in modality. Then to avoid that, and sometimes you use a different music. That is good if you use the correct style technique. In the execution, it's important uh, to watch that we not only focus on the big move, we also see the details, the small moves, and that is important in the synchronization, all the details, the small moves. And in skill is more that the clean execution of the technique. Yeah, in a specific technique, we see the level of the technique, but in execution, we see the clean execution of this technique.
Thank you very much. Yes, very important because every little detail is going to add and is going to count. So, as much as we can include these elements, well, the better. Now, those are not the only criterias. Also, the modality judge is going to be looking for one, musicality, that will be divided into criterias as well. Musical interpretation and music. Well, the musical interpretation is, well, of course, how the dancers interpret the music, how the music is applied in the choreography, and of course, the, let's say, clarity of this interpretation and the music. Here's the music, let's say, that will be ideal for that specific modality. And when it has some editing process, that it is edited correctly and, of course, with a good quality. So here are the two elements that are going to be present in musicality and, of course, are going to add to the performances. Also, the choreography. In choreography, we are going to be looking for the costume, that it should be, of course, all the attire, the wardrobes should be according to the modality. Arnold shared some of the tips that are going to be, let's say, well, expected in some of the costumes regarding these modalities. And we are going to be looking at the complexity. Now, we were talking about the difficult elements, let's say the difficulty that we're referring to, let's say, more specific movements in the choreography and specific elements. Here, when we're talking about complexity, we're talking more about the complexity of the choreography per se as a total. So here we're going to be including the choreographic composition, the different use of levels, the dynamics, the dynamics used in the choreography, also changes of speed, different formations, of course, well, depending on the level of the dancers and, of course, the age of the dancers, well, the complexity will be according to this, but, well, of course, the complexity level of the choreography will have here, let's say, be one of the criterias at hand. And of course, creativity. Well, here we're in a creative workshop, and the idea is to use all these elements and all the information to give some more elements and create every unique and single piece as your own. So here the creativity of how we use our dancers, the level of our dancers, how we use all the different elements we have of the modality, the styles, and how we apply them in a unique way that, of course, is not only allowed but looked for, and that can be correctly executed by the dancers as well. So how can we use these elements to our favor? And all of those elements put together are going to be helping in this last criteria, that's entertainment. So a choreography is going to be entertaining. Well, of course, well, we're in the entertainment industry, so one of the elements will be part of the dancer, where he or she, depending on the execution, the feeling, the connection they can achieve with the audience, will help the choreography to be more entertaining. But of course, always supported by other elements, because the use of the music, the ideal music, the different dynamics that we can give the choreography added to that interpretation of the dancers, are going to be talking about the entertainment or the connection we can create with the audience, and of course make the performance more entertaining. So these are the other elements that are going to be looked for by the modality judge. So here, Arnold, if something you want to add, or let's say complement the information for them to keep in mind.
Yes, the complement in musicality are music is that you use the music in a good way and in the rhythm, in the beat. But musical interpretation is the use of different elements in the music. A beat, downbeat, the different instrument that or sounds into the music, or the voice of the singer, the tone that he uses or the speed then when he sings. All of these are part of musical interpretation. In choreography, the costume must be according not just with the style and also with the theme of your choreography. If you already have any theme, then the costume have to be according with this. In creativity, find what things have not been done or what things have not been seen, and search new ways to combine movement, transition, formation, and everything that compose your choreography. And search and find new ways to do.
Yes, very, very important, and very important elements to keep in mind. And of course, according to the level, but those little details will always help your performance be, well, always better. And what we want is, of course, to get the highest score possible. So to use these elements at your advantage will help you out. Now, speaking of creativity, the one of the element important about creativity, remember, is something being unique and being, of course, your own creation. Now here we have one other element that the modality judge is going to be responsible for, and it is going to be the intellectual property of the choreographies. So here, plagiarism is something that is, let's say, frowned upon. We're looking for choreographies to be unique, to be your own. Now here, if we use other artists, it should be used as an inspiration. We have some references that sometimes we look up to, that we admire, and that is perfect. That helps the industry and the dance grow. Now those should be taken as that, as inspiration, and not elements we should copy just as they are done. So we should respect the other choreographers' work if we want our work also to be respected. So here, the uniqueness is going to be something adding, and you don't use elements that are unique and maybe have a choreography or parts of the choreography you're copying just as the other artist, it can come with a deduction. So be careful not to use those elements and copy them just as they are, but use maybe some elements as inspiration if you wish to include some of the elements in your performance. Okay, so remember, always be original, always bring a little bit of the elements that are yourself to the performance and not copy somebody else's work. So that also is going to be something that the modality judge is going to be responsible for, and of course looking in each one of the pieces. Now, that's the modality judge. Remember, we have another judge, the complementary judge. The complementary judge is going to be looking for other different criterias in the choreography that are going to support the scores and award maybe if well, of course the score maximum possible will be 30 points. Now we're going to see each criteria has to the right again the maximum score possible for each one of the criterias. The judge can award each one. Now we're going to have space use. Here in space use, we're going to be determined of 4 criteria where it's going to be divided. 1, the space. The space regarding how we use the space and that we fill the space with movement. Not just fill the space with bodies, because a choreography of, let's say, 45 dancers is going to inevitably fill the stage. But the idea is not to just fill it up, but to use it. So how are these 45 dancers using the space, or are they always in the same place? The idea is to use it, and use it even if there are 40 dancers, is there's just one dancer or 3 dancers on stage, move and use and fill the space with movement. Also, the formations. The formations are going to help give dynamics to our choreography. It's going to help also a lot of elements that are going to create different impacts. So we have a lot of formations that we can include, use depending on the story, the context you want to give. But we have circles, we have diamonds, we have squares, we have lines, we have diagonals, we have, I don't know, pyramids. There are so many different elements that we can use in our formations. So don't always, let's say, go and to the same ones. Look for different formations, see what your story or what impact you want it to generate in a movement, and see maybe what formation can help you emphasize that the specific element you want to give emphasize in your choreography. Also, the levels, the use of the different levels. We have high, middle, and low level elements in dance in general. So see in the modality or the technique you're using what levels are used in that technique, and try to include different variety of levels, so that will give also a different dynamic to the performance and give variety. So here, those 3 elements. Now moving to the 4th one, it's actually how we put together these 3. So the transitions will be how we go from point A to point B when we, of course, do our formations, and when we move from the high level to the low level, for example. Those are the transitions, and how we do those transitions. Are we walking? Are we dancing? Are we jumping? When we change levels, are we just dropping to the floor? How are we standing up? And of course, the idea is to do it through dance, through movement, and of course, the more creative and the let's say it's seamless in the choreography, well, it's going to be, of course, positive for your performance. Also, the complementary judge is going to be looking at the image. The image regarding creativity. So when we see that dancer looking, everything is going to be a part of that image. The hair, the makeup, the dress, well, the costume or wardrobe, every element is going to be a part of how we portray and how we see that dancer on stage. So it should be, of course, according to the style, the context we want to say, and how we are using those elements in a unique and different way. The accessories. If we decide to use accessories, how are they adding to my character? How are they adding to the context? Are they, let's say, adequate for the specific modality we're telling, and of course for the dancers, are they comfortable, and are they being used in the choreography, or are they just maybe being an element that can distract? So use accessories in, let's say, a manner that can add to your performance and give it a more, let's say, color, or can give it more diversity, or can help context your choreography, and of course the image of the dancer in the choreography. The makeup. Here, makeup, well, is going to be an important element when we're bringing any performance on stage in a competitive environment. We are taking sometimes even social dances that when we dance socially, we can just have our normal clothes and no makeup on and just be, let's say, ourselves. Now, when we go on stage, we are our artistic selves. So, artistic makeup and what we are going to be bringing on stage. We have lights, we have the audience that's far away. We want to make our expressions bigger. We want to be able to, of course, enjoy all the expressions, and this is going to be expected from female and male dancers alike. So when we're bringing it on stage, we want to be able to see the expressions more clearly, maybe mark more the, let's say, some characteristics of, let's say, the shape of the face or some expressions, and this will help create also a context of the timeline, of the age, of what it is we're portraying in our performance. And of course, the visual aesthetics. That's how we all put all of this together, and how that visual aesthetic will add to our choreography, and how they all combine and work in harmony for the performance, for the dancer, and of course for the modality in, let's say, in hand. So here, Arnold, are there some elements that can maybe help guide the dancers in when they are choosing all these elements and how to use them in these specific modalities?
Just take in count that in complementary, we focus on all the use of the scene. Yeah, in the modality, we see mainly the technique, but in here, we search the best visual impact using all the elements that you talk about now. And according with what style are you representing. That is very important that all of these things complement what style and what theme your choreography represents.
Perfect. Yes, very important to keep that in mind. And all of these elements, of course, will help that add to your performance. So very good. Thank you very much, Arnold. Now, these are not the only elements or let's say criteria that this judge is going to be looking for. Also, he's going to be looking for the performance projection. So here, there's four different criteria that are going to give the performance projection as a total. One, the gestuality. So here is that nonverbal language that goes from expression, facial expression, eyes expression, body language, all those different elements that are going to help, let's say, communicate an emotion, a story, and those elements are going to be part of the gestuality. Now, the authenticity of the character will be the second one. The authenticity of the character regarding depending on what it is you are bringing to your performance. If it's a specific character, a timeline, maybe what is happening in the performance. Are they maybe celebrating? What are they doing? And how we portray this in our performance. Of course, also regarding the technique. So, regarding if we're hip hop dancers, so the character should be clear that they are doing those elements and portraying this through hip hop. So how can we do this, and what elements can add to that authenticity of the character, from the movements, from how we stand, from all the body language, and of course well, that will also be part of the force of movement that will help the quality of the movement, that should be, of course, go along with the character, with the modality, and help my gestuality, because of course, depending on the clarity of my movement, it's going to help all of my performance. Now here, when I talk about force, it's not, let's say, strength necessarily. It means the clarity So the movements should be sharp. Is it sharp? Is it clear? If it's soft, if it's supposed to be fluid. So how is the quality of the movement and the preciseness of the movement? So it makes it clear, and it adds also to the gestuality and of course the authenticity of the character. Now, when we put all these elements together, it will give us the interpretation. It will help this interpretation. How all these elements put together with the posture, with how I look, with where I look, how it's all going to be and reinforce the interpretation that the dancers are going to have. And of course, that will be the performance projection. So, how we project to our audience and how we connect with that audience are going to be a part of these four elements that the complimentary judge is going to be looking for. So always look for these clearly in your performance and try to include as clearly as you can. Now, last but not least is the public response. These two different criterias are part of the complimentary sheet, but actually the judges that are going to be in charge of these criterias is the public. Now, of course, with all these elements included, but the public support is going to be measured and is important for the dancer because it is the energy that feeds the dancers as well. So if we're, let's say, on social media through likes, if we're through Zoom, comments, being present, being there. Remember, we have chat in Zoom, so that makes it able for us to connect, to be one-on-one. The same here, when you have questions, the chat's there, so it allows us to connect, and the same for the audience. Now also, especially when we're there with the audience live seeing the performances on stage, will the applause, the support to see the audience and the energy they feed the artist, well, it's going to help all of the artists to project more, and this will be considered, of course, the public response. So these are elements that are going to help not only there presently, but are also going to be considered in the complimentary judge sheet. So here, Arnold, are there elements that you wish to share with everybody that can add to the performances in these criterias?
Okay, on this part, it's very, very important to know the history and what there are before, after of the styles. Because when you understand the history and why the body look in that way or move in that way, then you have to your gestuality, authenticity of the character, the force and the power of the movement and the interpretation will be very, very good, will be better because you know why in that style or in another style my body move on that way or feel on that way or express in that way. Then it's very, very important that you know about the history or the styles of the movements.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, these are very important elements, and that part of the history that Arnold's sharing is very important and is going to add to the performance because that is going to, as he says, help the dancer understand. And when he or she understands clearly, they can communicate better that context they're giving. So it's going to add a lot. So, very important. That's a very helpful tip for everybody. Now, these are all the elements that can add points that you should keep in mind and should use to your advantage and work to and strive for each one to be present and to used wisely in order to have the maximum points possible. Now, we have our third judge. Remember, it's the deduction judge. So the deduction judge, these are elements we want to avoid opposite of the other elements. The other elements are we want them to be present and to be correctly executed. Here in deduction, these are elements we want to avoid in order to not to have deductions or lose points for lack of a better word. Now here, each one of the criteria is designed to keep that environment of positive and let's say competition, of course, of equalness and fair in all the competition. So each one, there's an important factor here in deduction as that you're here, well, live, or if you're watching on YouTube, well, you have an important factor to your advantage is the knowledge of what are those elements I should avoid not to have any deductions. And as you can be able, you'll be able to see most of the deductions, and especially the highest deductions in, let's say, score, are avoidable. If you know they are going to have a deduction, you can avoid them, and of course that way avoid the deduction. So that's a very important piece of knowledge you're going to have, and if you're here watching, well, you're going to have it. So that is going to be let's say a competitive advantage for your performances. Now let's start out with wrong modality. Now, remember all the elements that Arnold shared that should be present for each one of the modalities. Now, when we don't have enough elements present, and or we have more elements that maybe take it to another modality, we have, remember, we have 24 different techniques, and in those 24 different techniques we have 45 different modalities, where some are the combination of different techniques for all those, let's say, fusions that are created. So keep in mind that we have all our workshops online, and see what other maybe modalities combine the dances you're using. So that'll give you a guideline if this is your modality, correct modality, or maybe another one. So that's why, well, we're sharing all these workshops so you have all the information you need. So when it is a choreography that has elements that should be in another modality, well, it will be have, of course, a lower score in modality, but also have a deduction for wrong modality. So that means it should be danced in another and competing against another performance. So this, the knowledge of the modalities that you're going to use is important. Also, wrong division. And wrong division is according to the age range of the dancers. Here, we're not going to go over each one of the divisions. In our first workshop, we went over each one of the divisions, each one of the ages. So if you need this information, you can go to our first workshop or go on our organic code online, where we have all this information that you can consult and see what age ranges your dancers are and choose the correct division for them. We have the possibility for almost all ages to dance in some division together. So check which one is the correct and ideal one for your performance. We also have wrong level. We talked about the levels, that's student, new all dancer, student, open student, pre-professional, professional, all the levels. So choose which level is according to your all the characteristics that you have, and choose the correct level. And this is specially designed so new all dancers do not have to compete maybe against student dancers or even pre-professional dancers, and let's say student dancers don't have to compete against professional dancers, so nobody is in disadvantage. So that's very important for us here in All Dance International. Also, late arrival to stage. Well, the idea, of course, is punctuality is a very important part of the discipline, and we always send a preliminary, program or schedule to all of the dance studios once registrations are closed. So this will give the opportunity to check all the information from the name of the choreography, the how many dancers are in the registration, what is the modality, is it correct, every detail, and also including an approximate time of your performance or staging. So this will help us check if our dancers have enough time to change, what time I should be there. 2 hours in advance is what we ask everybody to get to of course, the venue. This will help the dancers to be ready on time, makeup, warm up, and of course, see how the event is evolving. Sometimes we're going ahead of schedule, sometimes we're going behind schedule. So this will help when we're going ahead of schedule, say, okay, we're ahead of schedule, dancers have to be ready faster. And we have 2 hours to see all those elements, and that'll help. So be there on time, be ready, and when it's our turn to dance, well, of course, they should be ready to do so. False routine start. Now, this criteria is, well, of course, part of the process of a dancer, and is when we are on stage that we are ready to dance and the music sounds starts dancing, well, there we will consider that the choreography started. If by any chance, I don't know, the music wasn't correct, or they didn't hear I don't know, a note and wish to restart, well, that will have a deduction of false routine start. So it's very important, and I recommend that you practice with your dancers. What happens if the music they that sounds isn't the correct music? Well, to stay still, not to move, and wait for the correct music to be played. Sometimes even when we're dancing through Zoom, the people that are playing the music, well, they rehearse, they do their best, but of course that's not their normal job. So maybe they put the wrong music, or maybe they started when it had already started, so it's I don't know, maybe half along the music. So the dancer should be ready for any eventuality that may arise, and of course not move unless they are ready to do their performance. Also, forbidden elements. Now, the forbidden elements are elements that can maybe endanger the stage or the well being of the dancer or any other dancer in the competition, like fire, like firearms, like water or any liquid, like let's say grease or any oils on the surface, or dust, feathers that can fall off the costume that can cause an accident or cause somebody to maybe slip and get hurt. So these will be considered forbidden elements that should not be used on your performances for all dance competitions. Also, excessive use of acrobatic or gymnastic elements. Now, remember, in each modality, we have a maximum acrobatic elements that can be used in the performance if you wish to use them. If you don't want to use them in these modalities, there's not an issue. But do not exceed the amount. For example, in hip hop, we have 4 acrobatic elements, so do not exceed those 4 acrobatic elements. These, in, for example, hip hop, excluding the power moves that are part of the hip hop and the breaking technique, more specifically. So in break dance, there's elements that are part of the break dance technique, like I don't know, flares or head spins or head slides. But if we do a cartwheel, a back handspring, a back tuck, those are elements that are, let's say, frequently and normally used, but are part of the gymnastic technique, not the breaking technique. So here we'll be considering the elements of acrobatic and gymnastic, and we will respect the break dancing elements in the break dance technique. So that may be doing a little bit of clarity in that point. Also, we have makeup, body paint, inappropriate, obscene, or offensive clothing. Now here, all the elements of that are going to be used by the dancer. Body paint, for example, is a beautiful expression of art, but it's an oil-based painting that can endanger the floor, make it slippery, or get it dirty for other dancers on the performance, and normally is done without it, let's say, any undergarment. It's a beautiful artistic expression, but not appropriate for the all dance stage that is family, let's say it's a family audience. And of course, obscene or offensive clothing that are irrespectful for maybe a culture, a race, or not appropriate for the age of the dancers. Poorly executed elements. Here, the technical elements that we include in our performance, well, we are looking for them to be, of course, correctly executed. If they are part of the technique per se, that they are executed correctly, and in general, elements that, for example, we bring, let's say we adopt from maybe gymnastics, or maybe from, I don't know, a jazz jump or some element in any choreography, well, we should respect the original technique, and of course the technique of the modality we're using on our performance. Elements like spotting on our turns, like alignment of the feet, the correct alignment, that the feet, when they are in the air, they're not abandoned, they have let's say they are active and they are in a present position. So those elements are going to be part of the poorly executed elements. Tripping or falling. Now here, tripping will be when we stumble, when we have an instability, when we trip, when we almost can execute an element and it almost fails, but we can, let's say, recover and execute it will be a 0.5, 0.5 in our deduction. And when we cannot save it, when it definitely it cannot be executed correctly and we fall or it can't be finished, well, it will be 1 point deduction in that element. So here, well, of course, we practice so those elements and those eventualities don't happen. But in case they do, well, this is the deduction that is going to be applied. Also, throwing elements to the public or to the audience. Now, if we have an element, say a prop or an accessory, and we wish to create a visual effect and maybe throw it, well, do it on stage or to the sides, but do not throw it off the stage to the public or to the audience or to the front. So those are elements. If you're going to just take it off and put it, well, you can put it on the stage, put it to the sides, no problem there, but do not throw it to the public, to the audience, or in front of the stage. Now, moving on, we have also inappropriate language or music. Now, here, keep the lyrics of our music appropriate for all ages, for all genders, for all race. It should not be offensive to any sexual orientation, to any gender, not have sexual content in the music and the lyrics we're using. If it's in English, in English. If it's in Spanish, in Spanish. If it's in Patois, in Patois. We should respect in all the languages. We have a multicultural audience, and of course, it's a family environment. So this is important to keep in mind. And inappropriate movements, the same. The movements should be appropriate, one age appropriate, and for all audience. So sexual implied movements will not be permitted and allowed on All Dance International stage. So keep the movements, of course, in a technical sense, and of course with some elements maybe of sensuality without bringing it to the sexual, let's say sexuality, a sexualization of the movements in your performance. So here it's important to keep these two elements in mind, that we are a family audience with multicultural views, and it should be, of course, designed in that manner. So these are the first elements. We still have a little more about deductions that will be taken into account and can being the key word, maybe have deduction. So if these do not apply, if they're not in the choreography, well, we will avoid the deduction and that way have a better score. Now here, Arnold, are there any elements you wish to add to these criteria that may give a guide or help the choreographers?
Yes, I have several tips. Like the first one is read the rules clearly. It's the most important. Answer to All Dance International if you have any doubts. We are here to help you to grow up and to understand not just the rules, understand the style, what you can use, what you can do with each style. Check the music to be sure that sounds good and don't have any bad word or expressions with double intentions. Yeah. Oh, take other performance like an inspirations, but avoid to replicate comfort or part of sequences. Make sure that the costumes and the movement that you use are appropriate for the level and the age of the dancers. I think that's the all of the deduction are clear, and all those are my tips for you.
Perfect. Yes, very important also to have and to keep in mind the age of the dancers and keep everything age appropriate as well. Now, speaking of, we still have other deductions left to go through. One, accidents or fallings of clothing, to keep everything in place. So all the accessories we're going to use, props or elements that are part of the wardrobe, if they're on the dress, well sewn, if they're a headpiece with bobby pins, every element correctly adjusted so it doesn't fall off or we avoid any accident. So I recommend to rehearse with all the elements that we're going to be using on stage for it to be comfortable, for the dancer not to be worried that it's going to fall or they're uncomfortable with the costume or the wardrobe. So this will help the performance in overall and also avoid any deduction for any accidents that can occur. Damaged clothing or untidy clothing. Keep your costume and your wardrobe and all your clothing, well, of course, with a proper presentation. Your shoelaces tied, your undergarment not visible. So underwear should not be visible. Costume should not be torn. Well, unless it's the aesthetics that you're going to be using, but that should be also clear. And every detail of the costume should be, let's see, correct and of course tidy. Also, the choreography and appropriate to division. Now here applies that well, the choreography should be age appropriate, what we were speaking about a minute ago. Altisonance at the start or end of the routine. Now here in the performance, on the music or by the dancers, there should not be any elements that refer to the dance studio, the dance school name, the crew name. It should be, let's see, neutral in that aspect. And the other element that should not be present are, let's say, expressions of euphoric expressions that may incite or arouse the public, the audience, or the judges. If we wish to generate that impact, it should be through our dance, through our expression, but not through verbal, let's say, expressions. So it should be done is by all the performance per se. We also have left elements on stage. Now this is regarding that all the elements that come on stage or go on stage with us should leave the stage with us. So everything we bring on stage, take off stage with us after the performance. If we had an element or a prop and we put it down when we end the choreography, take it with us off stage. If it's maybe an accessory we had and we had an accident, it fell off, we should pick it up and leave stage with it also, so we don't leave any elements on stage that can maybe cause an accident to any other dancer that is performing after us. So try to keep that in mind. Also, use of scenery. Use of scenery, the idea is to use all the elements we have in the choreography as costume, makeup, music, expression to tell our story, to give context, and to give all the elements we have. Now, the use of scenery will be considered elements we bring on stage that are there just for decorative purpose or to give an ambience. So all the elements that we bring on stage should be part of the choreography. If it's a prop, if it's an element, if it's something that is, let's say, an object, it should be at least 30% of the choreography, so it is not considered scenery. Okay, so that's an important piece of a device. So don't bring anything on stage that's just there to look pretty or to give a context of maybe the place or the time, something, and use it. If you are going to use it at least 30% in your performance. The fans, public obstructing the judgment. Now here, well, the public should be there, of course, to support the dancer and to give the energy, but in a respectful and, of course, appropriate manner. So when the choreography is taking place and the dancer does a difficult element or something we wish to, let's say, support them through applauses and, of course, through, let's say, a medium level volume where it doesn't distract the dancer, it doesn't distract the audience, and of course the judges can evaluate correctly the music and of course the musicality of the dancers, and we do not interrupt the performance. Now, before and after the performance, there, if you wish to be louder, if you wish to have a higher volume, there is not a problem. But during the performance, we should be have a, let's say, a moderate level volume, and of course be able to enjoy the performance. We also have getting off, jumping off, or dropping off stage. The only way we should get on and off stage are through the specific areas or ways that are marked to do so. We should not be jumping off the stage to the front, to the sides, to the back in any way. Only get on and off through the correct, let's say, pathways that are marked to do so and exits. This will help keep everybody safe and not have any possible accident for this reason. Also, the routine time. This is another element we went through more in detail in our first workshop, but for every seconds we go over the maximum time allowed for each choreography, well, it will have a deduction of 3 points. The maximum time is determined by the amount of dancers in the choreography, not by the modality or any other detail. So, for example, if we have a soloist, duo, duet, or a trio, that means the maximum time allowed, well, expected for the performance is 2 minutes. Now, if our choreography lasts 201, last 130, last 140, 150, there's not a problem. Now, for each 5 seconds we go over the 2 minutes, we're going to have a deduction. So if my choreography lasts 207, I have 3 points deduction, and 3 points can, of course, affect gravely a choreography and maybe be the difference between a first place and not even being on the top three. So we're going to try to avoid as many of these deduction as we can, and this is the one that we can foresee, and it's the responsibility normally of the choreographer. Now, I do not recommend to go too over the edge and too close to the limit line. For example, 204. I do not recommend it because the choreographic time is going to be taken from the first sounder movement and is going to be counted and stopped at the last sounder movement. So if our choreography and our music lasts 204 and maybe the dancer took one more second to get to their final pose or moved, this will mean that the choreography lasts 205 and we'll have a deduction. So to avoid any possible accident like that, don't go too close to the limit. I recommend you go 202 maximum, so you avoid any, let's say, deduction for this criteria. The other one is intellectual property. We went through that and we saw it in the modality judge. That's their responsibility, but will be reflected on the deduction sheet. Also, any regulation infringement. All our organic code is designed for the keeping the integrity of all dancers throughout the competition. So keep them safe, make it a very positive competitive environment. And this is, of course, a teamwork. So everybody, we want fair play, and any element that can go against that, that can maybe be dangerous or meet hazardous in any way or affect the well-being of anyone present can have a deduction for regulation infringement. So I recommend always fair play, and of course see the elements in the organic code that may be affecting the correct development of the competition that we're at. And last but not least, an increase in unreported dancers. Now, remember the preliminary schedule and program that was sent. Remember, I said we should keep and look that all the elements are correct, from the name of the choreography, the time we're supposed to be dancing, well, approximate time, how many dancers, the name of the dancers. So check that all the information is correct, and the number of dancers that are going to be registered on that sheet should be the amount of dancers on stage. Now, if there are more dancers on stage, each dancer will have 5 points deduction. That is going to affect in a very negative way the performance. So if there's 5 dancers registered, 5 dancers should be on stage. If there's 6 dancers, well, it will have a deduction of 5 points. If it's 7 dancers, 10 points. So as you can see, something we want to avoid. Now, what happens if less dancers perform? Let's say the same choreography that there were 5 dancers registered, only 4 could dance for any reason, and this still a small group, no problem, won't have a deduction, won't affect negatively the performance. Now, instead of 5 dancers and not only 4 dance, but what happens if 2 by any chance for any reason whatsoever could not dance perform? This means instead of being a group, it's a trio. So that would mean that they should be competing with the other trios, not with the groups. So this will have an impact because that's not the correct subdivision where they should be dancing. So if this situation arises or has maybe will present, well, we should inform through the correct, let's say, channel this on time for, let's say, the situation to be resolved, and let's say well, see how we can manage it correctly so nobody is in disadvantage in the So these are elements that we should keep in mind that are important for the correct function of the competition, and of course for it to be a very positive competitive environment for everybody. Here, I don't know if Arnold has something he would like to add or complement the information for the dancers and choreographers.
Not just recommend that uh, in the elements in a scene that really think about what elements are going to use and how these elements complement my routine. Is really complement or not? If it's necessary using or not.
Perfect. Yeah. So the elements we use should be used wisely, add to our performance, and give it something special, unique, and maybe see why they are included and for it to be clear in the performance. So that's going to help a lot the performance if they are used, of course, in this way. Now, those are the elements, as I was saying, that we should avoid. As you can see, what I told you at the beginning, most of the deductions are elements that we can avoid beforehand, before the registration, before we even create the choreography. So keep these elements in mind so your performance don't have any deductions or the least and minimal deductions possible. Okay, so that will help because all the points that we were adding for the modality and complementary judge will not be affected as much by the deduction. So that is what we want in order to have a better result and of course higher scores for our performers. Now, this information is going to be, of course, available online on our YouTube page for you to consult if you need. Also, it's an organic code, and we are here, of course, to support and give any guidance if you need. So, if you need, follow us on YouTube on All Dance International Official. Remember to subscribe, like, and we have the comment section for any elements you wish to share or any questions you have. I want to thank All Dance for this space, but especially also Arnold for being here, for sharing all the knowledge with all the love, and of course, well, helping each one of the dancers always do better and take the choreographies not only to the next level, but to the highest level possible by everyone. So thank you very much for sharing, for being here, and of course, for growing with us here in All Dance International.
It's a pleasure for me to stay here and be a part of the All Dance International, and of course to help everybody to grow up to take the next level, the highest level in the choreography in different styles. You come with us.
Thank you very much. Yes, that is very important. Remember, we have a lot of workshops that have already been. We still have more workshops coming up. So thank you very much. Thank you, Marissa, as well. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Keep in touch. Next one, we will see you on April 18th with Tango. And remember to keep in touch. And these schedules are in Panama time. So do the equivalent to wherever you're connected from. So I hope you have a great evening, great morning, great afternoon, whatever time it is where you are connected from. And thank you for being part of the creative workshop and the All Dance International family. So see you very soon, and bye bye.